A billionaire walks into his favorite restaurant on the worst night of his life. Same table. Same order. Same routine, the one thing keeping him sane. Then a young waitress grabs his plate and throws it on the floor. The whole room goes silent. She's shaking. Not from fear. From something else entirely. "Please," she whispers. "You cannot eat that." He built a $4.8 billion empire trusting two things, numbers and his gut. And right now, his gut is telling him this woman just saved his life. Stay with me. Because what she saw in that kitchen, and what it unlocks, will change everything. The plate hit the hardwood floor at the Pinnacle Restaurant and shattered loud enough to turn heads. The whole room went quiet. People stopped talking. Forks hung in the air. Even the piano player missed a note. Adrian Westbrook did not move. He was sitting at table 7, the best table in the restaurant, with a clear view of the city and a booth that gave him some privacy. 3 seconds ago, his fried fish was right in front of him. Now it was all over the floor. White sauce and little green pieces everywhere. Just a mess. The woman who had done it stood before him, her chest heaving, her dark eyes filled with anger he hadn't seen from her in a long time. Conviction. She looked young. Mid-20s, maybe. Her natural hair was pulled back tight under a black server cap. Her uniform was neat, name tag said Jessie in big letters. He noticed her hands were shaking. Not because she was scared. From urgency. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly, but people at the next table could still hear her. "I'm so sorry, but you can't eat that." Before he could answer, before anyone could, the restaurant manager rushed over. It was like he came out of nowhere. His face was red, almost pink. "Miss Carter, what on earth, please?" Jess's eyes never left Adrian's face. "Please, just listen to me. Something is wrong with that food. I don't know how to explain it. But please do not eat it." Adrian Westbrook built a $4.8 billion real estate business by trusting two things more than anything else, numbers and his gut. Had learned to read rooms, read people, read the subtle tells that most men in his position chose to ignore because ignoring them was easier than acting on them. He looked at the young woman standing before the wreckage of his dinner. And something in his chest went very, very still. Before we go deeper into this story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We bring you stories that challenge the way you see the world. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Adrian Westbrook had arrived at the Pinnacle at precisely 7:45 p.m., as he did every Thursday evening for the past 6 years. Routine was the foundation of his life. Without it, he believed, the whole structure would collapse. He was 51, with grey at his temples. He had this calm, controlled way about him that made people move out of his way without thinking. He grew up in Pittsburgh. His dad worked as a machinist, and his mom was a school librarian. He came to New York at 22 with $40, a business degree from a state school, and a drive that people didn't really get back then. They get it now. The Westbrook Group owned 28 commercial buildings across 6 cities. His name was on 3 hospitals and a scholarship fund for working class students. Forbes had written about him twice. He'd even testified before Congress about housing. His schedule was handled by 4 people, and even they didn't see everything. But every Thursday at 7:45 p.m., none of that mattered. The Pinnacle was his spot. Table 7 was where he reset. He always ordered the halibut, made the same way every time. It wasn't just dinner. It was routine. Something steady he could count on. He really needed that tonight. His day had been brutal. The Harrison Tower project, something he'd been working on for a year and a half, was about to fall apart. That morning, the main investor, a private equity firm called Caldwell Marsh, put out a statement saying they were rethinking their position because of concerns about the project. Adrian knew what that meant. Someone was leaning on them. And the timing, 3 weeks before the city council vote, wasn't random. Someone wanted the project to die. He spent the day in non-stop meetings and calls, going through paperwork, trying to figure out who was behind it. By 6 p.m., he had a short list. By 7, he sent his team home so they could sleep while he kept working through it. At 7:45, he walked into the Pinnacle, sat down, ordered, and tried to do what he always did at table 7. Clear his head. Breathe. Think. Then Jesse Carter threw his dinner on the floor. Adrian didn't call the manager. He didn't grab his phone to call his lawyers. He didn't act angry just because he was supposed to. Instead, he looked at the young woman, Jessie, her name tag said, and said quietly, "Sit down." The manager made a strangled sound. "Mr. Westbrook, I assure you this is entirely unacceptable and Miss Carter will be, please give us a moment, Benjamin." Adrian kept his eyes on Jessie. "Sit down." A beat. Jessie Saturday. The manager hovered nearby, clearly stressed. Adrian looked at him once. "I'll let you know if I need anything." Benjamin stepped away. The people at the other tables went back to pretending nothing was happening. They looked at menus, their dates, their phones. But they were listening. Adrian folded his hands. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Jessie swallowed. Up close, she looked young. And scared. Not of him. Scared of being wrong. Scared of making a scene for nothing. "I've worked here 8 months, she said quietly. "I know this kitchen. Tonight, before service, I was restocking near the prep station. I wasn't really supposed to be there, so I was trying to be quick." She paused. "I saw something." "Go on." "There was a man I didn't recognize. He had on a delivery jacket, but he wasn't one of our usual suppliers. He was talking to Cole. Cole Huang. He runs the cold station. Good guy. At least I thought so." She looked at Adrian. "I heard the man say, just one. Table 7. You'll get the rest tonight." Adrian didn't react. "Cole saw me," she said. He looked nervous. The other guy left through the delivery door. Then Cole went back to work like nothing happened. She pressed her hands flat on the table. "I watched him after that. When your halibut was being plated, he added something from a small container in his apron. White powder. He mixed it into the sauce." She met his eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to accuse someone without proof. I was scared of losing my job. But I couldn't let you eat it." They sat in silence. Adrian studied her. He dealt with all kinds of liars over the years. He knew what it looked like. She wasn't lying. "How long ago did the man leave?" "About 40 minutes. Adrian nodded. He pulled out his phone and set it on the table. "I'm going to make 2 calls. Stay here." "Okay." She looked at him. "Am I in trouble?" "No. You might have just saved my life." He paused. "Are you okay?" Her voice shook a little. "I don't know." "That's fair. Stay here." He called his head of security, Andrew Dalton, a former FBI agent. Then he called Detective Margaret Cole from Major Crimes. They'd worked together before. Andrew showed up in 18 minutes. The police came a few minutes after that. They found Cole Huang in the kitchen trying to dump the powder from his apron into the trash. Tests showed it was oleander extract. Strong enough to mess with your heart. Hard to catch unless you're looking for it. Mixed into sauce, it wouldn't stand out. The amount in Adrian's food would have made him pass out within half an hour. Maybe worse a few hours later. At his age, under stress, it would have looked natural. Almost. Andrew pulled him aside while detectives worked. "The delivery guy on camera matches someone in our database. He's done courier jobs tied to a private investigations firm in New Jersey. We're digging into it. He paused. Someone paid a lot to make this happen tonight. I know who, Adrian said. Andrew looked at him. I just need 40 more minutes to be sure. He returned to table 7, where Jessie Carter was sitting with her hands wrapped around a glass of water that someone had brought her. She looked up when he sat down. The powder was real, he said simply. You were right. Jessie closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet but steady. Okay, she said softly. Okay. I need to ask you something. The man you saw with Cole, you said you didn't get a clear look at his face. Did you see anything else? A tattoo, a watch, how he carried himself, anything? Jessie thought carefully. He was maybe 45. White. He had a company logo on the back of his delivery jacket, but it was covered, like he'd put tape over it. One thing I noticed, she hesitated. He had a ring. Not a wedding ring. A signet ring, I think, on his right hand. Gold with a dark stone. I remember it because it seemed wrong for someone in a delivery jacket. Adrian was very still. He knew that ring. Raymond Cole, not Detective Cole, not Cole Huang, was a man who collected signet rings the way other men collected watches. Raymond Cole was Adrian Westbrook's oldest rival. They started the same year, at firms right next to each other. Two guys from working-class families who got into the same building and pushed the same button. For 10 years, they competed hard but kept it clean. Then, 12 years ago, something changed. There was a big development in Brooklyn called the Faro Project. They both wanted it. Adrian got it. He moved faster on the financing and came in with a stronger plan for the community partnership. Raymond had never forgiven it. Over the years, Raymond's moves got dirtier. 3 of Adrian's projects hit strange delays with regulators, and somehow it all led back to Cole Development LLC. 2 investors were fed bad information about Westbrook Group's finances, details only someone on the inside would know. Nothing ever stuck. Nothing he could prove. So Adrian kept going. But the Harrison Tower was different. Harrison Tower was the single largest development in Westbrook Group's history. $2.2 billion. A mixed-use complex that would include 800 residential units, 30% designated affordable housing, a public library branch, and a community health clinic. It was, Adrian had quietly admitted to himself, the project he wanted most to be his legacy. Not because of the money. Because of what it would mean for the neighborhoods around it. Raymond Cole had been trying to kill Harrison Tower for a year. The Caldwell Marsh pressure campaign, Adrian now understood with cold clarity, was Cole's move. And when that still didn't work, when Adrian refused to give in, Raymond took it further. To this. Adrian spent about 20 minutes on his phone. He called his security people, his lawyers, and the team that tracks money. By the end of it, they had a trail. Payments went from the courier's accounts to a company set up in Delaware. That company led to another one. And that one shared paperwork with Cole Development LLC. It wasn't solid proof. Not yet. But it was enough for Detective Margaret Cole to start a formal investigation. The name wasn't lost on him. We'll have subpoenas out by morning, she told him outside the restaurant. It was cold, and you could see her breath in the air. If this all checks out, we're looking at conspiracy, hiring someone to kill you, and a pile of fraud charges. Raymond Cole is going to have a rough December. If you're still watching this story unfold, type "I'm still here" in the comments. This next part is important. Jessie Carter was waiting in the lobby when Adrian came back inside. She had her coat on and her bag over her shoulder. She was clearly prepared to leave, to slip away as quietly as the whole night could have gone if she'd made a different choice an hour ago. "Miss Carter." She stopped. "I'd like to talk to you." "Not tonight, tonight has been enough. But I'd like to understand a few things about you, if you're willing." Jessie looked at him carefully. "What kind of things?" The kind of things a person does when they're that scared and that certain at the same time. That balance is rare. I've been looking for people who have it for 30 years. He paused. You could have walked away. You could have told yourself it wasn't your problem. You could have found 100 reasons to stay out of it. Why didn't you? Jessie was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was even and clear. Because someone did that to me once, she said. Someone saw that I needed help and decided it wasn't their problem. And I almost didn't make it because of that. She met his eyes. I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to be that person. Even when it was hard. Even when I was scared. Adrian was quiet. Where are you from? He asked. Pittsburgh, originally. Something turned over slowly in his chest. What do you want to do? He asked. Not here, not as a server. What did you come to New York to do? Jessie hesitated. I'm finishing my degree at CUNY. Business Administration and Urban Policy. I have 1 semester left. She shifted her bag. I want to work in community development. Help figure out how to build things in cities that actually work for the people who already live there, not just the people with money to move in. Adrian studied her. I have a project, he said, called Harrison Tower. It's in trouble right now, and after tonight, it may be in more trouble before it gets better. But when it comes through, and it will come through, I'm going to need people who understand the community side of what we're trying to build. He paused. When you finish your degree, I want to talk to you about a position on that team. A real position. Not charity. Not a gesture. You have something I've paid consultants $500 an hour to approximate, and they never quite get it right. Jessie stared at him. I threw your plate on the floor. Yes. And you saved my life while doing it. He allowed himself something close to a smile. I believe in paying my debts, Miss Carter. She looked at him for a long time, parsing it the way he'd parsed her, searching for the catch, the angle, the thing that made the offer too good to be what it appeared. She didn't find it. 1 semester, she said finally. Then we'll talk. 1 semester, he agreed. The case moved quickly. When there's a lot of money involved and someone almost dies, things don't drag out. Cole Huang agreed to work with prosecutors to get less time. He told them who approached him, what they promised, and how much they paid. He was scared and drowning in debt. He made a bad decision and he'd be dealing with it for years. The restaurant owner was shaken by what happened in his kitchen. He paid for Cole's rehab himself. Some people believe in second chances. Adrian didn't disagree. The freelance courier was identified and arrested in New Jersey within 72 hours. His financial records told the story clearly once investigators had the thread to pull. They arrested Raymond Cole on a Tuesday morning in his Midtown office, up on the 41st floor of a glass tower. He didn't say a word to the cameras. His lawyers did. It didn't change anything. The money trail was clear. The testimony lined up. The evidence from the restaurant kitchen was solid. He was charged with planning a murder, trying to hire someone to carry it out, corporate spying, and 16 fraud charges tied to 8 years of going after Westbrook Group. Raymond Cole was 53 years old and had built a $1.1 billion empire. He would not see the outside of a federal correctional facility until he was well past 65, if then. Adrian watched the news coverage from his office the evening of the arrest, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, a habit he had maintained even after everything, because fear was not a good enough reason to surrender the things that mattered to you. He felt no satisfaction. He felt something quieter. The particular exhaustion of having been very close to something and having been pulled back. The recognition that life was more contingent than he liked to admit, more dependent on the courage of strangers in the right place at the right moment. He thought about Jessie Carter, wrapping up her last semester at CUNY. He looked out at the city below his office, the shiny high-rises, the old buildings falling apart, the people who'd one day live in Harrison Tower, and the ones who'd never even know it was there. Then he thought about Pittsburgh, and what it took for him to leave, and what it meant to come back to yourself. The Harrison Tower project survived. It took 3 hard months, new investors to replace the Caldwell Marsh withdrawal, a media campaign to counter the narrative Raymond Cole's network had been quietly seeding, 2 additional community meetings to rebuild trust with neighborhood advocates who had heard the negative rumors and needed to hear the truth. Adrian attended all the community meetings personally. Not with talking points. With answers. The City Council voted to approve Harrison Tower's permit on a cold February evening by a margin of 9-2. When the vote was announced, Adrian was in the council chamber. He did not celebrate visibly. But he called his mother in Pittsburgh and told her about it, and she said the same thing she always said, "Adrian, I never doubted you for a single day." He had never, in all his years, found a response to that felt adequate. He simply said, "I know, Mom. Thank you," and meant it more than she probably realized. Jessie Carter joined the Harrison Tower Community Development Team 6 months after her graduation, as promised. She was exactly what he had thought she would be. More, even. She had grown up in a neighborhood that looked a great deal like the one surrounding Harrison Tower, and she understood not just the policy language but the human language, the way people talked about what they needed in spaces where they didn't expect to be heard. She translated it. She brought it into rooms where decisions were made, and she made sure it stayed there. She also, on 2 notable occasions, told Adrian directly that he was wrong about something. He was wrong both times. He promoted her after the second one. They were standing on the construction site, hard hats on, watching the Harrison Tower's residential floors take shape against a grey October sky, when Jessie said quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "You never ask permission for that," he said. "Fair." She watched a crane move across the skyline. "That night at the restaurant, after you told me to sit down, I wasn't sure I did the right thing. Even after you said the powder was real. Part of me kept thinking maybe I saw it wrong. Maybe I made it bigger than it was." "You didn't. I know that now. But I still think about what could have happened. If I'd talked myself out of it. If I'd told myself it wasn't my business. If I'd let the plate go out and just assumed I was wrong." She paused. That almost happened. Adrian considered this. "Most of the nights that shape things almost don't happen," he said. "That's what makes them matter." Jessie looked at him. "You're starting to think too deep." "I'm 52. I've earned it." She laughed, open and easy, the way she had started doing around him. "I've been thinking about how to bring that into the work we do here. Not just the apartments, the clinic, or the library. Something else. Something about being seen. About how the choices that change everything can look small at first." She paused. "I want to start a community fellows program. Paid roles for people who live in the neighborhood. They'd help decide how shared spaces are used. So they're not just living there. They're part of it." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Write it up," he said. "Already started?" "Of course you have." They stood in silence for a while, watching the building rise. Steel and concrete and glass, yes, but also something harder to quantify. Something that had its roots in a single act of courage on a Thursday night when a young woman had decided not to look away. Before we wrap up, if you've stayed with this story all the way to the end, we want to hear from you. What moment hit you hardest? Drop a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because we're here every week with stories that remind you that one choice, one moment of attention, can rewrite everything. The Harrison Tower opened on a bright Saturday morning in March, 18 months after that Thursday night at the Pinnacle. The ceremony was everything Adrian had wanted it to be and nothing like what he had originally planned. The architect's original plan stayed mostly the same. The affordable housing went from 30% to 40%. His board didn't love that at first, but he pushed for it, and they came around. He had a way of getting people on board. The small urgent care clinic turned into a full health center with 3 full-time doctors. And the public library? It now had a youth reading room. Jessie helped design it herself, picked out the furniture and even decided where the windows should go. The people who cut the ribbon were not the mayor or the city council members, though they were there. There were 12 residents there. Some lived nearby. Others had just moved in through a housing program that helped families get off waiting lists and into the lower-cost units at Harrison Tower. A woman named Gloria had been waiting for years for a place. She got to cut the ribbon. Her 2 daughters stood next to her while she did it. Adrian stood to the side and watched. Jessie stood next to him, like she usually did now. Having her there kept him grounded. It reminded him why he was doing all of this. "You're not going to say anything?" she asked. "I said plenty at the microphone. You talked about investment returns and public-private partnership models for 7 minutes. That was a good speech. It was a functional speech." She was smiling. Gloria's daughters are going to remember today for the rest of their lives. You could have said something worth remembering. Adrian watched Gloria and her daughter step through the doors of their new building for the first time, the light catching the glass above them. "Some things," he said, "don't need words. They need to happen, and then they need someone to have been paying enough attention to make sure they did." Jessie was quiet for a moment. "Not bad," she said. "I'm learning." "You are." She nodded toward the building. "You really are." They walked inside together, into the place that had nearly never existed, into the thing that had begun, in a roundabout way, on a November evening when a frightened young woman in a server's uniform had done the hardest and most important thing a person can do. She had seen something that needed to be seen. And she had refused to look away. Adrian Westbrook gave one more speech that day, but not at the podium. He gave it to Gloria's daughters, 8-year-old twins named Maya and Sophia, who had stopped him near the building's main lobby and asked him, in their simple, straight way, why he built the place. He crouched down to their eye level. He thought about the boy he had been in Pittsburgh, in the house on Glenwood Avenue where the heat sometimes went out in January and his mother had stacked extra blankets on every bed and told him that being cold now didn't mean he would always be cold. He thought about the years of hunger, not dramatic, not cinematic hunger, but the low-grade daily kind that makes every decision feel like it costs more than it should. He thought about arriving in New York with $40 and a hunger no one could quite name. He thought about all the buildings he had built since then, the ones he was proud of and the ones he would do differently if he could, the ones that had served people and the ones that had only served the bottom line. He thought about a Thursday evening in November when a woman named Jessie Carter had thrown a plate on the floor and given him back something he hadn't known he'd lost. The ability to see what was right in front of him. "I built it," he told Maya and Sophia, "because where you live matters. Because a home isn't just a place to sleep. It's the place where you become who you are. And everyone deserves a place like that." Maya thought about this seriously. "Did someone help you when you were little?" "Yes," he said. "A lot of people did. And I forgot to pay it forward for a long time. I'm trying to catch up now." Sophia nodded like that answer made sense to her. Then the girls ran off to find their mom. Adrian stood there and noticed Jessie watching him from across the lobby. Her arms were crossed. She had a look on her face. Maybe she approved, maybe she was a little amused. Probably both. "That was worth remembering," she said when he reached her. "I had a good teacher," he said. She rolled her eyes. But she was smiling. Outside the big windows Jessie pushed for, she told the architects light mattered, and they agreed. The city kept moving. Buses rolled by. People walked past. Taxis stopped and went. Pigeons fluttered around. Everyone had their own life going on. Most of it unnoticed by anyone else. Adrian looked at it and felt something he had spent most of his adult life either chasing or avoiding. He felt at home. The gap between the world we live in and the one we could have sometimes comes down to one person in one moment paying attention instead of looking away. Doing the hard thing instead of the easy one. Speaking up instead of telling yourself, "It's not my problem." That is the whole story. That is every story. If this one moved you, if something in it landed, share it with someone who needs to remember that ordinary people do extraordinary things all the time. They just need someone to notice. And if you're watching this for the first time, welcome. This is what we do here. We find the stories hiding inside ordinary moments and we hold them up to the light. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button if this story stayed with you. And come back next time. Until then, keep watching. Keep noticing. And keep believing that you are never as far from the